It looks like a shutdown of the United States federal government's been avoided with hours to spare. It's after the House of Representatives approved a temporary funding bill which will last 45 days, although it will have to be debated and approved by the Senate. Faced with a rebellion by hardline Republicans inside his own party, the House Speaker, Kevin McCarthy, called for support from the opposing Democrats.
I do not believe our troops need to be punished for us not getting the work done. So I ask Congress, we'll stay in session the next 2 weeks, continue to work to get this done, but you cannot look the men and women in our military in the eye and ask them why they are not going to be able to pay their bills because the Senate hasn't done their work.
A search is underway for a man who's being described as a serious risk to women and children. Lancashire police are looking for 35-year-old Stephen Pennington after the sex offender broke his release conditions and was recalled to prison. On the eve of the Tory party conference, more than 30 Conservative MPs, including the former Prime Minister Liz Truss, are warning Rishi Sunak they won't back any new tax rises which increase the current burden. Ms Truss is also calling for levy cuts to help the economy grow. But the former Conservative advisor, Luke Trill, has told LBC voters are concerned about much more than just tax.
I think the things which will shift public opinion are people not going to the supermarket and thinking, oh my God, I just can't afford the weekly shop, or I can't get a GP appointment for the next month or whatever, and by which time I'm either better or in A&E. They're the things people talk about in our focus group. So it's really hard to see anything really shifting over the conference season.
A couple whose wedding turned to tragedy when fire destroyed their venue in Iraq say they've had to go into hiding. More than 100 people were killed when pyrotechnics were lit inside the hall in the city in Nineveh in the north of the country. And in sport, Europe have moved closer to regaining golf's Ryder Cup. They are leading the USA by 10.5 points to 5.5 in Rome. LBC weather, rain will move across northern England, parts of Wales and most of Scotland overnight, but the rest of the UK should stay dry with a low of 10. A band of occasional rain and drizzle will slowly edge southeast across England and Wales on Sunday. Dry, cloudy and rather warm ahead of that, with sunny spells and blustery showers elsewhere, and a high of 23 degrees. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Tim Daly.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with Nick Abbot.
Hello. Well, let's get back to it.
Text and tweets and such from last night. David says, I'm starting a new RSPB, the Royal Society for the Prevention of Birds. What do we need birds for anyway, he says. What do they do? I mean, we can keep chickens, but they're not really birds anyway. They're food. We'll have a few quail and peasant for the king. Peasant. He's eating peasant.
Oh, no.
So yummy. One likes a couple of peasant in the morning to set oneself up for the day. It really is a wonderful breakfast. Lightly poached. Not peasant, pheasant. A few quail and pheasant for the king, and maybe a duck or two. For the French, that's all we need, he says. I've never met a bird I liked anyway, says David. Well, that's a good point. Gary says, couple of things. On the State of the Nature report, which we were talking about yesterday, I'll sum it up for you. The State of Nature report, that was his conclusions. He says, I haven't read it. Does it mention where all the white dog poo has gone? Never see that anymore. Also, why Richie wants to be a PM? Oh, the PM, please. Screwing this up. The show's barely even started. Can we start again?
No.
He says also why Richie wants to be PM, to please the mother-in-law. It's quite a dynasty he needs to impress, and let's be honest, just saying her shepherd's pie was the best he's ever eaten wouldn't cut it like it would for the rest of us. I wonder if his eagerness has anything to do with the fact that his wife's worth more than he is. Do you think that might have something to do with it? Not that she did anything for that money, of course. Caroline texts, the lack of insects is terrifying. I talk to people in the communal gardens around where we live, and very few seem to have noticed. Very frightening. Well, very few seem to have noticed that there's a lack of insects. Are you saying that it's frightening that very few people have noticed, or it's frightening that there are a lack of insects? I'm very confused, Caroline. I'm not very clear.
I'm genuinely unclear.
Genuinely unclear. Why is anybody listening to Liz Truss, by the way?
Absolutely.
I mean, seriously, why is anyone listening to Liz Truss? Why does she think that anyone would be remotely interested in anything she has to say? Liz Truss. Good grief. This country is a laughingstock now. It's a good job that Ancient Orange is still hanging around and is quite likely to be the next president of the United States. Otherwise, we would be the world's laughingstock.
Oh, shut up!
Yeah. Oh, and I note that Melania has renegotiated her prenup agreement because of her husband's legal woes. Your husband might end up in jail, Melania.
I don't care.
She's not that bothered. Simon says, I imagine only 2% of 18 to 24-year-olds vote anyway. Meanwhile, you can guarantee that between now and the general election, stand-for-nothing Starmer will somehow manage to lose an unlosable election. Hey, kids, it's later than you think. Get yourself a photo ID right now. You can do it online. Don't do it tomorrow. Don't do it next week. Don't wait till just before the election. Do it now. This government is banking on you not doing it. Kerry, C-E-R-I. I'm going to go with Kerry. Kerry texts, hope you're well. Well, not really, Kerry, but you know me, I don't like to complain.
Stop whining.
He says, after a week of the new 20-mile-an-hour speed restrictions in Wales, I haven't noticed any difference in the time it takes to get through built-up areas. Traffic is still moving the same.
Correct.
That's right. It's the same. What are you people whining about? I passed a protest about ULEZ coming in tonight. They seem to have built up like a little tent city at the edge of a park, which cannot be legal. And they were trying to hand out flyers to motorists who weren't having it, and they were just driving straight by. These pathetic little signs that says, please honk to support us in our fight against ULEZ. And were there any honking?
No.
Not a bit of it. What are you so angry about, for crying out loud? Lazarus text, according to Sunak, 20 mile an hour is not British values. Yeah, they're trying to tell us what our values are. And they can keep telling us what our values are until they're blue in the face. It don't make it, no, never mind. We will know what our values are, and they do not coincide with theirs. Neither do our interests, by the way. Dave says, if you are rude to the over 65s, then please do so this week. I will be 65 during this coming week, so next week, please be nice to the over 65s. I absolutely will. And on that subject, here's a call in Erith. Steve.
Hello, Nick. I heard they was definitely over 65 on the bus today. They was very old, and they was extremely upset with this government and definitely not going to vote Conservative.
Right.
And I've just found something that I wrote down during the week that I don't know what they was talking about.
Who is the they? By the way, I mean, who is it that you were talking about? You're talking about you overheard some people grumbling on the bus about the government. Is that right?
Yeah.
Now, were they on the top deck or the bottom deck?
On the bottom, because I'm a cripple, so I can't get upstairs.
Right. Okay. Gotcha.
But yeah, they was very angry. They wasn't happy.
Yeah. Well, with good reason. I mean, just look around you.
But it relates to what I just found. What I wrote down. I heard Michael Gove, I don't know what he was talking about, but this is what he said. Unfortunately, it seems things just didn't turn out as Brexity as they should have done.
Yeah, it's probably the fault of the woke. I expect that it probably is. All right, good work. Thanks a lot, Steve. As soon as there are any developments on the bottom deck, you let me know straight away. Thanks a lot, mate. Michael Gove said that, did he?
Major capital letters, big news story.
Anybody remotely interested in what Michael Gove says?
No.
Not really. So there was the front page of the Daily Mail. God, the Daily Mail today gave me enough material to last till the end of the year. I lost count of the amount of ways in which they got things wrong. Poll shows Rishi a path to victory, it screams on the front page. Liar! And that is completely incorrect in every respect. And they print a poll over a double-page spread, and then they try to illuminate that poll for us. And every single thing they said about it was wrong. Rishi's path to election victory. Mail poll shows voters want tax cuts so they can keep more of their money during a cost of living crisis, and which is completely wrong. Not true. It's as though they printed the poll after they'd written the story and just assumed that what they wanted to be true would actually come to pass when they asked people what they thought. Rishi Sunak's path to election victory is today spelt out by voters who back his green gamble and the Rwanda plan. On the eve of the Conservative Party conference, an exclusive poll for the Daily Mail finds the public support his bold policies that create clear blue water with Labour. No, they don't create anything of the sort. But voters urge him to let them keep more of their money through tax cuts, it says, as the cost of living emerged as the key battleground ahead of the looming general election. You know, the two are not the same. Tax cuts benefit you more the more you earn. Those on average to low wages depend more on the things that taxation can provide, more than the few quid that a tax cut will bring them. I mean, that's the big lie about tax cuts, that they bring happiness. Happiness. They don't, unless you're earning a fortune. What brings happiness is what taxation can provide. A reliable health service, for instance, law and order, community resources, childcare, youth clubs, sports facilities. You know, the things a decent society can afford by pooling their funds, rather than the winner-takes-all approach beloved of the rich, who don't need any of that stuff. The Mail says the electorate trusts Mr Sunak over Keir Starmer to reduce the debt. Liar! No, it doesn't. The poll they print as part of this story actually says, who do you trust most to grow the economy? And the public say Starmer, not Sunak. I mean, it's not rewriting history, it's rewriting the present. Why print the results of the poll and then write a story around it that says the opposite of what the poll says? It says they back the PM's U-turn on green plans. No, they don't. The fifth most important issue, which will determine how they vote, is green issues. Housing, crime, jobs, the environment comes fifth. They don't back the PM's U-turn on green plans. They are more concerned about other things. The Mail says the Survation poll found that half of the public supported the government's decision to delay some of its targets to reach net zero to help household finances, with just 36% opposed. Sunak said that he would delay a ban on sales of new petrol and diesel vehicles from 2030 to 2035, and he slowed down plans to prohibit new gas boilers. While he faced a backlash from some in his party, the Mail poll suggests it could help him to an election victory. It doesn't. I mean, first off, people don't know what the plans for reaching net zero are because the government don't know what they are. They keep saying that their target remains unchanged of reaching net zero by 2050, but it's a completely meaningless statement because this lot won't be anywhere near power by 2050, and there's no actual plan in place to get there. It's just a wish. I mean, it's like asking the public if they think the government should delay plans for humans being able to fly. They haven't got a plan for that either. And here's the biggie. The Tories and the press are desperate for tax cuts because the millionaires on the Tory benches and the billionaires that run the press hate taxes more than anything else on earth. And they think that we must do too because they don't know anyone that is not like them. But we don't. Even when prompted, more people say that we are paying the right amount of tax. 37% said the level of taxes in the UK should be cut. 38% said the level should be maintained. But you know what? I bet that 100% think that taxes should be spent more in the interests of the people rather than the interests of the donor class. But they didn't ask people about that. And then the Mail says, last night MPs welcomed the findings of the poll, but urged Sunak and Chancellor Jeremy Hunt to heed the calls and bring down taxes this autumn. I mean, did the writers read what they had just written? They wrote that the majority say that taxes are at the right level, and in the very next sentence they said that people think that taxes should be cut. Am I losing my mind? Is this real life, or am I hallucinating? Former leader Ian Duncan Smith says it showed Sunak was at his best when he was Conservative. Ian Duncan Smith. I mean, is that the same Ian Duncan Smith that backed Liz Truss to be our Prime Minister?
Absolutely.
How did that work out?
Oh, fabulous.
And former Minister Sir John Hayes, who chairs the Common Sense Group, said that the poll should form the template of the party's election manifesto, the Common Sense Group. Yeah, here's the minutes from their last meeting. Despite voters believing Sir Keir is more trustworthy and would make a better Prime Minister, on core issues the difference between the leaders was more marginal, and only a couple of percentage points separating them on matters such as their perceived ability to halve inflation and grow the economy, says the Mail, which is called making a silk purse out of a sow's ear. Sunak lost on growing the economy and halving inflation to Keir Starmer. He lost on trustworthiness. He lost on how they're running their own parties. He lost on who would make the best Prime Minister, which is usually biased towards the person who is actually doing that job at the time. And he still lost. The fact that the Mail is trying to paint this as a win just shows how desperate the times are for the Tories and their press enablers. And we've got a weird little man for a leader that none of us voted for, all bouncy like Tigger with the sad eyes of Eeyore, trying to spin lies and misdirection and mendacity to cling on to a job that he's terrible at, while strip mining the nation of its wealth and blaming the last 13 years of Tory failure on everyone except the Tories themselves. What a way to run a country, eh?
Dreadful.
0345 6060 973. Text 84850. Email nick@lbc.co.uk. If you're on Twitter, it's at LBC. Friday, Saturday, Sunday night at 10. Nick Abbott, LBC.
This is LBC with Nick Abbott. Call 0345 6060 973. Text 84850. Alexa, send a comment to LBC.
Right, so what are we doing?
Given we are doing a radio show, but it does remind me that I do a podcast with Carol McGiffin.
Yeah.
She is a total kook. Now, the idea of the podcast is that we try to solve people's problems while laughing our faces off. Now, if you want us to have a bash at your issue, then you're going to have to tell us what it is. We're not mind readers. The email address is nickandcarol@global.com. NICKANDCAROL @global.com. But you have to prepare yourself for total satisfaction. There's almost 200 episodes up there, and if you've got an hour and you wish to be amused, then I think you'll find one of them to be right up your alley. Ask for it by name on an internet near you. What's your problem with Nick and Carol?
Oh, right, yeah.
His call in Bath. John.
Hello.
John.
Do you know, it's difficult for me to explain what I'm actually kind of annoyed about, but anyway, I'll try. But,
you're very, very angry. You don't know why, but you're just furious.
Well, listen, do you know that tree that got cut down near Hadrian's Wall?
Yes.
300 years old, 200 years old tree, right? Cut down by an idiot, right?
Yes, certainly.
But it amazes me the vitriol and the kind of the faux pearl clutching and purse grabbing to their necks of people who are upset about that. But then at the same breath, they're going on about ULEZ.
Well, they're going on. They're more than that. They're going on about the inconvenience of driving at 20 mile an hour, which might save the life not of a tree but of a child. But you know they're not really bothered about that.
But that's the point. But that tree is an ambassador for every tree across our globe that's either underwater or burning.
Yeah.
And it's like, and they care about that one tree, and they're outraged by it. And whoever cut it down is an idiot. But the point is, they're upset about that, but then they don't see that if you're upset about that tree being cut down, that's like a kind of a symbol of what's going to happen to the rest of this bloody globe.
Well, it's what is happening now. I don't know what the actual numbers are, so I'll just make them up. Did you know that they cut down 1 million trees a day just to make toilet paper? Did you know that?
No, I didn't, but I'll tell you what, I believe you.
Well, even if it's not true, it doesn't prevent it from being a fact.
Exactly. But the thing is that they're so upset about this tree, but then, and then under the next breath, they're moaning about ULEZ, and they're moaning on, and they're piling all this stuff on Sadiq Khan, even though it was a Tory idea to begin with. And it's like, I'm not a fan of anybody, left or right, but I tell you, the Tories have got to realise the gravy train is stopping. You're going to lose all of your privileges. It's time to get a job.
Yeah, I think that that is delusional speak, John. They're not going to lose a single solitary thing. They'll be just fine. Every single one of them, I bet every stitch of clothing I'm wearing right now, they'll walk into at least 5 non-jobs that pay 6-figure salaries that they don't have to actually show up for. I bet you.
Well, but at least we won't have to see them anymore.
That's a good point, yeah. All right, thanks a lot, John. Cheers, mate. 034, always look on the bright side. 0345 6060 973. Here comes the information from next door. 41 million trees a day are cut down across the world. Blimey. And we're obsessed about one, particularly photographic one. Here comes more information. 15.3 billion a year. Good grief. Do we even have that many trees on this planet? We cut down 15.3 billion trees a year? It's truth. What for? Why? Is most of it toilet paper? Destroyed 46% of all the trees in the Wiord. W-I-O-R-L-D. We got that wrong. It's educational, this show, no?
No.
0345 6060 973. John texts, I am dangerously close to 69 years old and therefore a baby-booming coffin dodger, but I wouldn't vote Conservative if you paid me. It's genetic, he says. However, I know a lot of fellow wrinklies who do, but they're aspirational, also known as greedy. And Philip texts, how many more have I got these from yesterday? Oh, only 2. Wow, how about that? Philip texts, when people get older and wiser, they are less likely to vote Labour. Older voters saved us from a nightmare of a Corbyn government. You can thank them later. No, I've changed my mind. You can thank us now. When people get older, they get wiser. I'm not sure that's true, Philip. I think when they get older, but further than that, we can't really say. And Kieran says, the main problem with our country is that we've all been forced to play an ongoing mass game of Monopoly, with most people constantly being deprived of the passing go money. Roll on universal basic income. When are we going to start playing by the rules, says Kieran. Well, everybody's writing their own rules, so, you just carry on. I'd rather not play that game at all, if it's okay with you. Just too boring. It just goes on and on and on. Let's have Edinburgh. Martin.
Oh, hi, Nick. I think if Labour get in, then what we're going to see is a real demise in education with this whole VAT on private schools issue.
A demise? What do you mean, demise?
Well, it means when ultimately standards slip, because what they're going to do is put VAT on private schools, and we're going to see a lot of people
will slip.
Yeah, I mean they'll be putting VAT on private schools.
Yeah.
That means ultimately you're going to see a lot of people leaving the private sector and going into the state sector.
Yeah,
and it's going to cost the taxpayer a huge amount of money, as you see people having to.
You know what will actually happen if a lot of middle class people have to take their kids and MPs, if they have to take their kids out of private school and put them in state school. The quality of state schools will improve dramatically. They will insist upon it.
But is there any evidence, though, to back up these claims? I mean, if you look at the schools
it's called
that are poor-
human nature. If they are putting their own kids in a place, then they will want the best for their kids. If they can't afford the 45 grand or whatever it is per year to put them in private schools, then they're going to have to rely on the state system. And then those middle-class people will insist on better schools.
Well, I mean, if we look at countries that have sort of gone after freedom in academic education, it hasn't really worked. It's always backfired.
What do you mean,
on them.
freedom?
Freedom to decide where you send your kids to educate, to where you send
Name
your kids
the
to
country
school.
that such a thing has backfired on them.
I don't see any evidence that it's been effective in any nation.
Hang on a
Earth.
minute.
If you
Back
look at
up.
the US.
Back up. You said when countries decide, and I don't even know what you meant by that. Where's the evidence of what you just said? The other,
Well, you look
other
at the
countries.
US and how you look at the United States, where there's been this attack on academic freedom, and it's never really worked. There's
What do
studies
you mean by academic freedom?
the freedom to decide where you send your kids to school.
In the US, you are not allowed to decide where you send your kids
No,
to
no.
school. What are you talking about?
You have policies around the world that have various degrees of freedom, and if we look at countries which allow schools to compete with each other, which have a more neoliberal approach, it always leads to better outcomes.
Name the country that is true of.
Probably Singapore.
Probably.
I would say Singapore. You could also look at other East Asian countries which
Right,
do
so
very well on PISA.
You're just guessing, aren't you?
No, I'm looking at the PISA rankings.
The PISA rankings. Well, the PISA rankings for which students perform best on maths and arithmetic.
Exactly.
Yeah, Singapore is an island state. You can't really compare Singapore to Great Britain.
Singapore is a large, developed country. You could also
No,
look at
Singapore
South
is
Korea.
like comparing London with the rest of the country. If you want to compare London and Singapore, or New York and Singapore, then that would be a relevant comparison. But you can't compare Singapore to any other country because it's not really a country. It's just it's a port with a banking racket attached. Good grief! I should have hit pause when he said neoliberal. Yeah, another one of these. If we make private schools more expensive and middle-class people, upper middle-class people, have to take their kids out and put them in state schools, then they will demand that those schools improve. That is absolutely true. There's no question about that. And why are we, poor dopes who pay taxes, subsidising the rich to put their kids through a school that is just going to entrench their advantage in life? We must be out of our minds. I mean, talk about mugs. 0345 6060 973. Text 84850. Email nick@lbc.co.uk. And if you're on Twitter, it's @LBC. Friday, Saturday, Sunday night at 10. Nick Abbott, LBC. It's 10:30. The news headlines with Tim Daly.
Best for network performance. Verified ee.co.uk/claims. Terms apply. Coverage and experience may vary by
Nick
location.
Abbott on LBC. Call 0345 6060 973.
You're joking.
0345 6060 973. Ahmed says, Cruella told us this week that discrimination is not enough of an excuse to claim asylum. I'd say going to private school, coming out as thick as two planks, is not an not an excuse to be an MP. Well, that is an interesting point of view. Any thoughts, Smug?
My view...
Yeah, he agrees. Stan says, if Rishi wants to be a man of the people, maybe he can learn how to use a contactless card first. Yeah, you don't just wave it around in the air like it's a magic wand. I cannot believe it. I mean, he's the Prime Minister of this country. You believe that?
No.
Edward says, it also concerns me. A dangerous paper like the Daily Fail can afford to offer their poison for ADP daily, while the Guardian, which needs to get their message out to the masses, overcharge at £2.80 defeating the object, says Edward. Is it? How much is it? Wait a minute. Let me just check on that. £1.40. But then it is a Saturday, and it has extra pages of misinformation to squeeze in. £1.40 for the Daily Mail. Can you believe that? And I was looking through this poll that they've splashed on the front page. Poll shows Rishi a path to victory. It shows the absolute opposite. It demonstrates in colour that he's going to lose the next election. I mean, the things that they're going on, these are the issues that most affect how you're going to vote at the next election, and they rank them from top to bottom. Cost of living is number one. Well, he can't go on that, can he? Because he and the Tories are primarily responsible for the cost of living. Health and the NHS. No. The economy generally. No, they've screwed that up massively. So the top three of people's interests, they can't say word one about. So they've put in all their eggs in the small boats thing, immigration, which is people's number 4 concern, which is pretty low down the list when you consider the amount of propaganda that people have been getting about the invasion of people that have been coming on our shores. You know, being invaded like a horror film. And then the very next one is environment and climate change, which he seems to be rowing back on because it's woke. Being concerned about where you live is woke, apparently. They're doing a wokey-cokey.
Okie-dokie.
And then there's a lot of things that you won't hear them speak one word about. Energy, housing. Of course, they've totally failed on that. They've failed on crime, which is the next most important issue to people. They've totally failed on education, including allowing the schools that you send your child to potentially fall down on them and kill them, you know, but apart from that. Then it's welfare, pensions, jobs, defence, transport, culture and foreign policy. And they can't go on any of those at all. So they've decided to go on, it's a mystery to me, but I imagine that he has been told to do this, because I can't think for a single solitary second that he dreamt this up himself. It's a car thing. That's who he's going to go for. The car people. Which isn't even on the list of people's concerns. Question. Which politician would you trust most to achieve the following? Pass new laws to stop the small boats. Sunak and Starmer are equal on that. Reduce the national debt. Sunak is ahead of Starmer by 2 points, but it's pretty much even Stevens. Halve the inflation rate. Starmer wins that easily. Grow the economy. Starmer wins. Reduce NHS waiting times. Starmer wins that in a landslide. So all of those things that people are concerned most of, Starmer wins. It's amazing, really, that, all Starmer has done is just stand there blinking in the spotlight, and he has beaten Sunak, who's thrown himself around like some sort of desperate Tigger. And then the other ones. Which of the following is closest to your view? Generally speaking, the level of tax in the UK should be maintained, is the winning option, as opposed to tax cuts, which is the Tories' number one concern, because, you know, that's what rich people are most obsessed about, paying less tax. Which of the following is closest to your view? Is Rishi Sunak is doing well or badly as leader of the Conservative Party? 31% think that he's doing a good job. 48% think he's doing a bad job. How does that spell success? Which of the following is closest to your view? Keir Starmer is doing well or badly as the leader of the Labour Party? Badly, 34%. Well, 43%. That sounds like a winning margin to me. Which of the following party leaders most demonstrates the characteristic of trustworthiness? Well, guess who loses that one? Sunak on 28. I can't believe that 28% of the people that expressed a preference actually trust him. Based on what? 39% think that Keir Starmer is trustworthy. He wins that easily. There isn't a single solitary thing that is substantive that Keir Starmer loses to Rishi Sunak. And yet the headline is, poll shows Rishi a path to victory. No, it doesn't. It shows the opposite to that. It shows a direct line to failure. The first time that he's going to ask us what we think, and it'll be a big fat no.
No.
Yeah, it's a no from us. We can't wait till we're asked. 0345 6060 973. Merthyr Tydfil. Hello, Jeff.
Hey, Nick, how you doing, fella?
All right.
Well, Sunak's been down, well, I don't know where he's been, but I think he's up in Manchester or something. But he's doing the rounds, isn't he? And he's arguing that it's a blanket 20 mile an hour.
Yeah. He keeps saying that over and over again, as though saying something that's not true again and again will make it true in the mind of the listener.
Well, the interviewers are picking him up on it.
I know, and his response,
the question,
yeah, exactly.
And he's totally ignoring it.
They will say, I've seen this with my own eyes. He will say, well, this blanket ban is crazy and nuts, and the interviewer will say, well, it's not a blanket ban. There's 20 miles and 30 and 40 and all the way up to 70, depending on which road you're going on. And he bounces up and down, and he's got that sort of glassy-eyed look on his face. And his response to that is to just say, of course, the blanket ban of 20 miles an hour is really bad. Oh my God, he's like a misfiring robot.
Absolutely. Well, I put it down to more of a Roland Rat tribute act. It's something about the guy that's just unbelievable. But
he does have a certain puppet quality to him. Yeah.
There are ramifications, okay? Now, we've got the leader of the Welsh Conservatives down this neck of the woods, apoplectic. He's gone from gammon to purple. His eyes bulge, his fists clench. Mm-hmm. He has, in some sort of aggressive demand, he says, I'm going to keep on going on GB News. I don't care if they're sacking people on GB News. I'm going on there. He has become
it's a tourist safe space, isn't it? It's like Trump's rallies. It's where they feel most at home.
Okay. Well, the thing is, the ramifications of all this aggression, there have been threats of violence down here against the First Minister, Mark Drakeford, and the Lee Waters, who's the Transport Minister.
Right.
So there are things to pay here, and it's just so wrong. And
this is what you get when you legitimise fury and anger, and you tell people, and you ramp people's ire up and up and up in order to try to persuade them to vote for you at the next election, because it's total self-interest. That's the only thing that we're talking about here, and to hell with the consequences.
Yeah, and these threats of violence are real. And down here, we've got this mad idea that and when you got this, I feel you have to hang on to the truth somewhere. I'm always reminded of Orwell, and he said, look, if you're the last person on earth and you're still hanging on to the truth, you will be sane. You will not be the man.
Well,
and I think the world
you're talking about facts, Jeff. Nobody's interested in facts anymore. We're all about feelings now, baby. Keep up. All right, thanks a lot, Jeff. Cheers, mate. 0345 6060 973. Yeah, people are very, very angry. They're not actually really sure what they're angry about, but they just get addicted to anger. And that is actually true. People do get addicted to anger. And that is what this government is playing on, people's addiction to being angry. Because it sends off, chemicals rushing around your brain. And that is as addictive as heroin or your mobile phone or anything else that you might get hooked on. People are addicted to anger. It doesn't really matter what they're angry about. They can be angry about 2 drops of rain falling down a window pane. Makes no difference. And if you can corral that anger, if you can put a lasso over it and sort of train it in some way, then in quite a lot of instances you could get them to push you over the line in the next general election. If you can get enough people that are furious about, I don't know, it doesn't really matter, furious about the issue of the day, whatever it might be. You have to drive slightly slower going through a town. Well, I'm just so angry about that. What kind of a person would be angry about that? Well, the answer is no end of people. That's not true. There is an end to the line of people that are angry about that. The thing with them is, though, And as with many other things that have plagued this country over the last 13 years, they're the minority are the ones that shout the loudest. And they bellow and they bellow and they bellow like babies until they get what they want, or until they're distracted by some other issue that they are encouraged to be furious about. You know, when the biggest selling paper in the land starts almost every other story with the words "fury as," then that is an indication that what I'm saying is right. And it will be fury as sandwich in shop costs more than £5. Fury as drivers are told not to mount the pavement outside schools. We are entering a period of complete social insanity here. For a minority of us, who we should ignore, regardless of how loud they're yelling. 0345 6060 973, text 84850, email nick@lbc.co.uk. If you're on Twitter, it's @LBC, Friday, Saturday, Sunday night at 10, Nick Abbott, LBC.
This is LBC with Nick Abbott. Call 0345 6060 973. Tweet @LBC. Text 84850.
Oh, hello.
0345 6060 973. I do like him.
Oh, hello.
Let's have Wembley Park. Christoph.
Yes, Nick.
Christoph.
I do. There's so much I want to say, I don't know where to start. Actually, you know, this thing about anger and fury.
Yes.
Do you think the Daily Mail have ever said something like, fury at huge increase in child poverty? Or...
No. Fury as billionaires are expected to pay some tax. No, they've never actually said that, no. They may feel it, but they've never said it.
I wonder if they've... I mean, because more recently we've had the concrete in schools thing.
Yeah.
And so this could be something we could check, but have they heard something like fury at possible imminent collapse of schools?
Well, I think they have actually said that. I mean, you know, they're not entirely a propaganda tool for billionaires.
Oh,
They
really?
do occasionally get something right, and I think they have written quite a few stories about how absolutely unbelievable, incredible it is that schools are in danger of falling down on top of children. But if that happens, then you can't take them to hospitals because they're in danger of falling down because of the same thing. And if that happens and you get injured, you can't go and sue the relevant authorities because the courts are in danger of falling down as well. So apart from that, everything's fine.
Yeah, the main thing I rang about was Singapore. Because you're absolutely right. I don't think Singapore can really be compared to any other area of the world. I mean, you described it quite interestingly as a port attached to a banking racket, I think you said.
That's about right.
It's quite close to the truth, but it's actually a socialist, authoritarian, one-party state.
Yeah, they spend, interestingly, about double per head not per head, as part of the yearly budget, government budget, double what we spend on our state education. Singapore, no wonder they're doing all right, and it's not all private schools either.
No, it's not. But and the thing is, I believe every family actually does have to pay for their child's education, although it is, of course, subsidised.
Very much so.
But they do. The thing is, they value education more, which is why they're prepared to subsidise it. This is a thing that often fascinates me about Nigel Farage, thinking that we should become more like Singapore, because I don't think he'd want to live in a socialist, authoritarian, one-party state.
No.
I'd love your listeners to look up the name Alan Sheldrake in relation to Singapore. I think he might just about be still alive. He's a British journalist and author who wrote a book criticising the Singapore justice system, in particular in relation to its use of the death penalty. And on the day the book was launched, he was in Singapore, and he was arrested.
Right.
For criticising the Singapore justice system.
Yeah.
And he was in prison for a few months. Nothing very serious, but it just shows you what kind of a place Singapore is.
They used to be different in that regard to this country, but what you've just described could happen to somebody here too. Be critical of the government, step just a little bit too far over the line, and you're going to jail too.
I think it hasn't quite got to the stage where if you write a book criticising the government, that would happen to you. I don't think. Not quite yet.
Well, I don't know. I mean, it depends what's in the book. I mean, if you're criticising the actions of the government during time of war and you're highlighting illegal acts that governments have engaged in against civilians, then you'll go to jail forever.
In the States?
No, in this country. It's happening right now.
Who? Oh, I'd love to know the example.
You're going to have to look that one up.
Oh dear! Oh, that's a nice get out. Well, yes. I mean, when you're comparing educational system in Asia, I mean, I think a better comparison with if you're talking just about East Asia and how much more education is respected, I think you should look at somewhere like India, where you do get free education, but again, because education does seem to be so much more valued in Asia, even the government schools are really, I mean, they're quite strict and all that sort of thing, but you do get a really good education in India, even if you go to a government school where you don't have to pay for it.
Yeah,
and I think it is one of those situations where the government schools are pretty much as good as the private schools. The private school is just good for things like networking, getting to know people. In fact,
it must have something more than that. I mean, class sizes is probably something that they are improved on, because that's why people send their kids to those schools.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure how this relates to it. My sister-in-law was a classmate of Rishi Sunak's wife.
Is that right?
They sent their daughter to effectively a government school. Yeah, I'd say Rishi Sunak's parents-in-law sent her.
All right, well, as soon as you get the dirt, I want you to let me know straight away. All right. Thanks a lot, mate. Message coming in from next through the glass here. Graham Smith from Republic was arrested just for showing up to the coronation. Yeah, we got that nice lady who was arrested and jailed, I believe, for holding up a sign that says you can decide according to your conscience outside a court. And she was holding up a sign that is actually chiselled into the stone of that building, and they put her in jail. And I'm trying to remember what his name is, but the guy who is in prison that America wants to have extradited to spend the rest of his life in maximum security, who was part of WikiLeaks. What's his name again? It's gone straight out of my mind. What is it?
Not Snowden. Give me 10 seconds.
10 seconds he wants in order to come up with that. Oh, I'm sorry. No?
Assange?
That's Julian Assange. Yeah. You can go to prison in this country for thoughts and deeds. 0345 6060 973. Johnny texts, Finland, superb education, 0 private schools. Jason says, make cabinet ministers educate their kids in the worst school in their area and see standards rise. Exactly. It's not rocket science, is it? If you don't have to put you or your family into an institution that you're in charge of, then you have no interest in improving that institution. See the NHS for further details. Jason says, this guy, I presume the chap, the neoliberal who is praising private schools, he says, this guy's full of nonsense. It's not an attack on education. You're free to send them where you like. It's just that taxpayers will stop subsidising elite schools for fees. Exactly. We are such mugs. us dopes who pay taxes. I mean, we really are. We subsidise schools that the rich send their kids to, and they send them to those schools in order to bake in their pre-existing advantage in life. And we let them do it. We subsidise them doing it because these private schools are supposedly charities. I mean, really. Come on, people. Wake up. It's later than you think. 0345 6060 973. Text 84850. Email nick@lbc.co.uk. If you're on Twitter, it's @LBC. Friday, Saturday, Sunday night at 10. Nick Abbott, LBC.
On your radio, on Global Player, and
Play LBC.
leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC. This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with Nick Abbott.
Yeah!
Who do you think you're talking to?
I'm talking to these nice people who are calling me up on the phone, 0345 6060 973. So am I getting that right, that the news is that Fishy Sunak has found a magic money tree just in the nick of time? Just when he's staring a loss and disaster in the face. Just when he is about as popular in the polls as herpes, he's suddenly found a big trove of cash. And he's going to give £20 million to 50 cities over the next 10 years. The overlooked cities. I wonder if any of those cities are either Tory strongholds, or they are possible. They could possibly switch them to their way. You know, the difference between winning and losing, not that great. £20 million just might be the kind of sum that makes a difference. Either that, or he's just become generous. Yeah, he's just a nice person. That's why he's doing it. 0345 6060 973. Plymouth. Hello, Julie.
Hello, Nick. How are you feeling?
Great, mate.
Great. I wanted to phone up because some of your callers were like singing the praises of private education. And I'm all for private education. I always believe if you can afford something, then you should, take the best of it. But you must also recognise that taxpayers are paying to subsidise this charity basis.
Right.
And also, we've got state schools where children are not eating, and there's not free meals for them. And
correct.
I can't make a circle out of that, or a square, or a triangle.
No.
I can't make anything. It's nonsense.
Yeah, the figures about poverty in this country are really incredible. And I could read these stats and tell you that I'm talking about, the Horn of Africa or someplace in India, somewhere like that.
Yes.
And you'd believe every word I say. It's almost unbelievable that these are figures that represent the situation in this country. 350,000 more children were pulled into poverty. That a figure which now stands at 4.2 million, which is about 30% of all children in the UK living in poverty in this country.
Any right-minded citizen of this country who pays taxes should not be able to accept paying charitable taxpayers funding for private schools when they know that figure is there.
Right.
You can't accept it. It's wrong. And I hope people will not be taken in by this magic money tree, because obviously it's all sound bites. And please, people, please just listen to your hearts.
What seems bizarre about that, I mean, that's a considerable amount of money, £20 million for 50 cities. I mean, that's a massive amount. He's just found, I don't know, in the ashtray in his Bentley. Where's he found that money?
He's let everything fall apart. In, the Tory government over the last 13 years, they've desecrated everything. And now they're making promises because it's time they need a cross in a box. If people cannot see that, please, people, see it.
anything that says I'm going to do something in 10 years, you can pretty much just dismiss that out of hand because they're not going to be around in 10 years. Even if they win the next election, Fishy Sunak is not going to be the Prime Minister in 10 years' time. That's just a fact.
They've been here for 13 years and they still, what have they accomplished? And people, people need to be real and say to themselves...
Exactly, yeah, come on,
what
people.
Are they do for us? And not just us, but think about people that are even in worse situations than yourself.
Right, I'll quote Ronnie Reagan. Do you feel better off now than you did 13 years ago? And I'll just leave that hanging there for a moment. Think about it. Do you feel better off now than you did 13 years ago? Ask yourself. All right, thanks a lot, Julie. 0345 6060 973. I mean, is it easier to get an appointment with your GP now than it was 13 years ago? Were things cheaper in the supermarket 13 years ago or now? Was electricity and gas more affordable 13 years ago or now? Any of the things that are important to you, it doesn't matter. I mean, you come up with your own list and just ask yourself, are things better now than they were 13 years ago? 13 years is what they've had. I mean, you'd think that would be enough time to really experience the full or to take on the full Tory experience. I mean, they're flailing around now. They're actually in the business of pretending that they haven't been in power for the last 13 years. There's a few ministers that have actually tried to pull that one off when they've been interviewed on the radio and television. Oh, well, we're getting a grip of that now, and it's, Labour haven't done anything about this issue over the last 13 years. Can you believe that? What an absolute shower they are, Labour Party. They haven't done anything about this, haven't done anything about the sewage in the water for the last 13 years, said Therese Coffin. She actually said that out loud. So that's not a slip-up. That's going to be policy. They're going to be, because they all speak from the same hymn book. They all get trained by the exact same people. They get the same emails. They get the same bullet points. You go on an interview and you just keep saying the same thing again and again and again. And if you just fill the air with noise and numbers for long enough, then the time will be up, and then you can waltz off out and do it again on a competing channel. That's the game. It's not an accident they keep saying the same things over and over again. Painful. It is. It's like being in one of those horror films where you're chained to a radiator and you can't leave. It's just like torture. Please make it stop. 0345 6060 973. Plymouth again. Mark.
Oh, hi, Nick. Hiya. Yeah, you've briefly mentioned Finland earlier on, but I just wanted to tell you that people that ring in and say you need a application to get good results, what you've got to do is to counter that argument is use facts. So Finland is ranked one of the highest globally. In fact, recently, the World Economic Forum, they were ranked first. In the 1970s, it was mainly privately run, and it changed to publicly run to improve results, by the way. 90, if you can get your head around this, for those people who think, you can't really argue with this, I don't think. Well, people often do because their scarves are too tight around their necks, but 93% of students graduate 17.5 percentage points above the average US student, and it's got the highest level of people, children, go into higher education in the whole of the EU. It's 66% go into university. Mm-hmm. And the final figure, which people love, the average student will graduate 30% less than the average student has spent in the States.
Yeah, well, graduate having spent 30% less than in America. Unfortunately, where we are being dragged on this and then many other issues is where the Americans are, rather than where the Europeans are, which I have to say is the wrong route to take, regardless of what speed you are doing when you're on that route. All right, well spotted. Thanks a lot, Mark. 0345 6060 973. Yeah, the American model is winner takes all. And the rules are written by those who have already won, which is why the Tories are so keen on it, because it's a cabinet of millionaires. They don't care about the state of the NHS. They're never going to use it. They're not remotely interested about the state of state schools. They're not going to put their kids in those. Gary says, people are crying about the tree cut down by a vandal with a chainsaw, but what about the ancient woodland destroyed by the vandalism of HS2? Good point, Gary. Charles says, I can't believe the police actually had the time to send a forensic team to look at this tree. I thought they were operating on a fire brigade type service nowadays without time for menial crimes. Well, it's not a menial crime if a lot of people are very upset about it. And I think they should investigate it. And whoever is responsible should feel the full force of the law, which will probably be a light slap on the wrist and a polite request not to do it again. Chris says, all private schools should be seized and turned into state schools. You're right, Nick. If MPs and the rich sent their children to state schools, the schools will be properly funded and standards improve. Well, I'm not sure about the seized and turned into state schools part. I mean, I'm not against the idea of private schools any more than I'm against the idea of Rolls Royces. I mean, I can't afford one. I'll never be able to afford one. But the people who build Rolls Royces, they can't afford one either. They're just normal people who build things for a living. You know, they stitch leather and I've got no idea. They grease pistons. I've got no idea. But, you know, it's a lot of people employed on average or fairly good salaries to make something like a Rolls Royce. Same with private school. I have no beef with the idea of a private school. My problem is that us poor dopes who pay taxes are subsidising the rich to send their kids to private schools where their advantage in life will be set in concrete. We must be out of our minds to have been persuaded that that's a good idea. 0345 6060 973. Glasgow, Craig.
Oh, hi there, Nick. How you doing?
Good, thanks.
Yeah, what a mess we're in. I mean, you asked, are we better off? We're clearly not. But part of the problem for me is the total lack of accountability of these MPs now. The idea that any time they will do an interview is either with people who are strongly aligned with them, or more bizarrely, and I don't understand how this happens, you've got Lee Anderson, 30p Lee, interviewing the Home Secretary. So the Tory chairman is going to interview the Home Secretary, both part of the same government, and ask tough questions, is he? Of course he's not.
The only thing that could be weirder than that is if Rishi Sunak was interviewing himself. And I would not put that past this regime, that he did some sort of weird thing with a mirror where he asked himself questions that he wants to give an answer to.
Well, exactly, you know, because it's obvious they're going to pat each other's backs. And I think what really frustrates me the most about it, and probably others as well, is that any time you dare challenge them, they just turn around as if we've never had it so good in this country. They talk about how brilliant all the work they're doing is. Well, if that's the case, why are we on our knees? And then they attack, you know, like the likes of the BBC or certain presenters on LBC, because they will actually ask proper questions that people actually want the answers to, and not just, you know, pat them in the back and tell them how wonderful they all are.
Yeah, one of the defining elements of a right-wing government is their disapproval of being questioned.
Yeah, exactly. But this is a culture that has to change in this country, and no matter who the next government is, you know, because it'd be the same for Labour, for example. I wouldn't want to see, you know, I don't know, Angela Rayner being interviewed by, say, Rebecca Long-Bailey or something like that, because that just wouldn't be right.
Right.
And we have, as part of improving ourselves in our political system, that has to change. Now, Ofcom are supposed to be the ones that regulate that and say that a politician can't interview.
Well, as far as I'm aware, they're looking into it. I don't really know what that means. But what you're describing is not politics. It's not. They aren't political interviews. It's infotainment. It's just an amusement. Now, I don't know whether you can get around the rules by saying that, but it's not a way to seek out the facts. It's just propaganda.
Well, that's exactly what it is. And my worry is that what this Tory party wants to do is basically turn us into Little Russia. Because they're trying to peddle their own propaganda narratives. They've got their own platform to do that, and they're trying to remove us from the ECHR, which, as it stands, only Russia is not a part of, and Greece briefly wasn't when they were in utter financial chaos. And they want us to become like that. That's deeply worrying for all of us, because regardless of what political you come from, you don't want to be like that in a country where
here's how
by the Tories.
Right, here's how worrying it is. What if we left the ECHR, the European Court of Human Rights, we would be reliant on the kindness of Suella Braverman. Now, just let that sink in for a minute. Okay, have you thought about that for long enough? All right, thanks a lot, Craig. Gotta go. Cheers, mate. 0345 6060 973. He was wrong about two things. There is no evidence that any Prime Minister, either current or recent, has ever said that we've never had it so good.
We have never had it so good.
And as for accountability, well...
This government will have integrity, professionalism and accountability at every level.
LBC. Abbot on LBC. Call 0345 6060 973.
This is absolute tosh.
Mimi texts, unlike your other presenter who insulted everyone and teachers by saying why parents who cares for children are punished to pay VAT, 2 exclamation marks. Does that make any sense?
No.
No, I don't think so. Di says, tree-hugging, tofu-eating, woke lefty types.
Okie dokie.
Insufferable sorts. Vertical farming is the answer to all our woes. Problem is the tractors keep falling back down, says Di. A listener with material.
Oh, no.
And Alan says, it would be possible in the UK to sort all of our problems by having a 0.01% financial transaction tax, which would raise about £3 trillion annually. Yeah, but it might cause some bankers to lose a couple of pence off their 7-figure salaries, Alan. So that's out. In fact, it's probably illegal to say that out loud. You want to watch yourself, mate, otherwise you'll wake up chained to a bed in Rwanda. Let's have Maidenhead. Hello, Gary.
Oh, that was quick.
Yes, Gary.
How are you? Are you feeling all right now?
Yes, fine, thanks.
Yeah, I had the chance to get some jam today, but after what happened to you, I avoided it.
Yeah, don't have the jam.
Warning! No, I just thought this is a good one, because I had to go over to High Wycombe, and there's a big school there called the Abbey School. It looks like a castle, yeah.
Yeah.
And and that's rumoured where our Prime Minister's children go.
Oh yeah.
Right. And but anyway, there's a big roundabout outside. I was making my way to the food bank actually, and and on a Saturday it's all jammed up, and there was an homeless guy sat outside the entrance to this place, and I saw a Bentley and a couple of other posh cars going in, and I thought, he's never going to get any money out of that lot. But
no.
I got to the food bank, and I was saying to the chap there, and he goes, and he actually said it and all, and he said, "Oh, that's where our Prime Minister's children go," and £47,000 a year.
£47,000 a year. Also known as peanuts to those that can afford it.
And it's a registered charity and all.
Yeah, ridiculous.
School.
I mean, just how silly is that? We are a silly country for allowing this to happen to us.
And then I made my way back to Maidenhead, and I mean, matey had gone, but some of the cars were coming out, and we're not talking about Vauxhall Cavaliers.
No, I wouldn't think so.
No, and I, as I went past, and I thought, how can that be registered as a flipping charity?
Yeah. And, I completely agree with you, 100%. I don't have a problem with private schools. I have a problem with people who can't afford to send their children to private schools, subsidising those that can afford to send their children to private schools. That's ridiculous. What I'm actually quite surprised at is that I haven't had some furious poor person, because they're always poor, bringing me up and saying, well, that's just the politics of envy, that is. It's not. It's the opposite of that. It's the politics of not wanting to be taken for a mug. It's like the super rich avoid paying taxes. Now, they can spend a fortune on avoiding their taxes. They can employ accountants and lawyers in big shiny buildings in the City of London, and they can spend a fortune to save a bigger fortune. I mean, if it costs you £1 million in accountancy fees, but you save £100 million on paying tax, then that's worth the money, right? So then they, just in order to float among us and claim superiority, with the money that they have saved by avoiding paying tax, they then become philanthropists. Doesn't that sound great? Philanthropy. And they'll put their money on burnishing their reputation. They'll put a wing on a gallery, or they'll build a classroom extension on the school that they went to, as Fishy Sunak has actually done, and his wife, pouring money into private schools while seeming ignoring the ones that are state schools in their own manner. Philanthropy, that's what that's called. Gary, I've got to go, but thanks for that. 0345 6060 973. Sanjay says, what people need to understand is if we abolish private schools and private healthcare, we would have the best schools and the best NHS in the world, because these rich MPs would have no choice but to use the services and mix with us plebs, and they will make these services properly funded and staffed. Then they can say it's world-beating. Yeah, I do believe that I've said exactly that already on this show, but it's worth repeating. Thanks for repeating it, Sanjay. Of course they will. If they have to send their own kids to a school, then they, A, are going to make absolutely sure that it's not full of aerated concrete and it won't fall down on their little Jocasta's heads, and B, that the education that the kids receive in those schools is going to be tip-toppermost if they have no choice but to send their kids to state schools. And I think that if you are a member of the government, then you should, as your patriotic duty, should have to rely on the NHS for your health needs, and you should have to rely on state schools for your kids' education, because otherwise you don't have any you don't have anything in the game. It's not remotely imperative to you as an MP to actually improve the lives of those that have to rely on state healthcare and state education and so on, if you don't have to use any of it. I mean, isn't that obvious? Jeff says, if you get rid of private education, does that mean you also have to get rid of private teaching? Nobody's talking about getting rid of it. I'm talking about it not being subsidised by people who can't afford to put their kids in those places. The rest of us. He says, if so, do you think the teachers will agree to having to lose some or all of their income? People who can afford private education or teaching will just send their child abroad unless you outlaw private tuition. What would be the point, says Jeff. Again, it's too extreme. Not one single person on this show, especially me, has said anything about outlawing private education. What are you talking about? And Martin says, would you discount an attempt by the Tories to adopt a rejoin the EU policy and blame Labour for taking us out in a final desperate attempt to cling on to power? No. At this point, I wouldn't to put anything past them. Let's see now. Who's waiting the longest? Cornwall. Hello, Malcolm.
Oh, Nick, how you doing?
Good, thanks.
In reference to your point earlier about the Tories making people angry and encouraging anger. Well, it seems to me that, having done a little bit of homework, that the right wing is very, very angry with itself. The three people suspended from GB News, Wootton is one, Fox is another. I can't remember the third of the other, the name of the third party. But he has claimed in a separate story
Who has claimed?
The third guy suspended from GB News.
Right.
There's been 3 people suspended over the last 3 or 4 days.
Yeah.
And this guy is unbelievably angry because he says that the people he works with are trying to get his job. So I assume he's talking about the extreme right-wing guests who come on his show to talk to him about extreme views.
I cannot put in words how totally uninterested I am in the travails of this channel, having never seen it. The only thing I've ever seen of it is clips that people put up on Twitter, and it doesn't look like anything that I would want to watch, any more than Fox News in America looks like anything that I would want to watch.
But the reason I raise that is it links to the next part of what I want to say, which is Mog, who works for GB News, Esther McVeigh and her husband who work for GB News, and I think there's another one. There's 4 of them, and they're all in the Tory party now. In the Tory conference, there's about 3 or 4 groups. You know, like the ERG. Well, 3 or 4 such groups are all writing their own manifestos.
Right.
Which they're going to be working toward and publicising at the Tory conference.
I would encourage them to do that.
And there's going to be much anger. Now, there's Prue Leith. She's a bit of a celeb. Her son, Kruger, he's a Tory MP, and he is a real right-winger. He's heading up one of these groups. You've got another one with...
Okay, Malcolm, I'm running out of time, but I think, in a nutshell, I would encourage all of those people to write their own manifestos and wrestle each other to the ground and do the thing that Labour ordinarily do, which is to split the vote amongst themselves so that usually it's the Tory party then step over the Labour party's fighting prone forms and take the tape. This time around, it might just be the other way around. Let's hope so. Thanks a lot, Malcolm.
This is LBC with Nick Abbott. Call 0345 6060 973. Tweet at LBC. Text 84850.
Hello, boys.
Mark says, I live on a modern housing estate inhabited by people whose cars are bigger than their tiny houses. Making inadequate SUV drivers stick to 20 mile an hour may save the lives of tiny children on their way to our primary school. Correct, Amundo. That's right. These people that are bellyaching about 20 mile an hour speed limits, I mean, what are you like? The new 20 mile an hour limits deployed across Wales, says the Mail, do not make drivers slow down. The Transport Secretary has claimed. As a few of the permanently disgruntled staged a go-slow motorway protest against the restrictions. They staged a go-slow on the motorway as a protest to not being able to drive as fast as they like through a town. Yeah, that makes sense. I'll sum up their argument. Transport Secretary Mark Harper said the blanket 20 mile an hour speed limit. They keep using that phrase. It's not an accident. They've been told to say it over and over again. Slippery, fishy Sunak did the same thing. The blanket 20 mile an hour speed limits is to make it appear as though all roads have got that 20 mile an hour speed limit, but they don't. They're lying about that. And when they're caught out in a lie, what do? Do they back down? Hell no. They just repeat the lie as though they haven't heard being corrected by the interviewer. That actually happened. Rishi Sunak. The interviewer said, it's not a blanket ban. And Sunak's response was, yes, but this blanket ban, painful. What have we done to deserve this? I'd love to know. It must have been really bad. Transport Secretary Mark Harper said the blanket 20 mile an hour speed limits for restricted roads deployed by the Labour-run Welsh Government make life harder for motorists and are incredibly unpopular with the public. And as you might expect from something that a Tory minister said, that's not true. Just last week in Wales, a poll by Redfield and Wilton Strategies found that 46% of people support the policy of 20 mile an hour speed limits on roads compared to 34% who opposed it. 46% support the policy, 34% opposed it. Now, I'm no maths expert, but I think that 46 is a bigger number than 34. Almost half as many people, again, support 20 mile an hour than oppose it. And in the eyes of this government, that means that it's very, very unpopular. You know, but like I said before, no one's interested in facts anymore. We're all about feelings, baby. And as long as they can make enough people just angry enough, they think that it's a route to success. Mr. Harper said it was not sensible to have a blanket policy like the decision in Wales. I mean, they really do get training for this stuff, don't they? They all say the same thing, the buzzwords and phrases. It's not an accident when every Tory minister goes on telly and says the same thing, word for word. Not an accident, it's a conspiracy. It's a conspiracy to befuddle the electorate. Fishy said the same thing. Those desperately sad eyes he's got and that bouncy way. Blanket policy, he said. It's not a blanket policy. He was told it wasn't a blanket policy on television, and his response was just to repeat the phrase again, like a robot.
Correct.
Clampdown was seen in Wales. It's become the first country in the UK to reduce speed limits down from 30 in built-up residential areas with a view to saving lives and cutting costs for the NHS. And there it is. Saving lives and cutting costs for the NHS. Which party is against saving lives and protecting the NHS? The Conservative Party. I mean, as long as they're making it clear, we might as well say it out loud. These measures in Wales and in cities with ultra-low emissions zones and pedestrianisations aren't anti-car, they're pro-people. But in their flailing panic at losing power and the access to the magic money tree, the Tories seem to have been told, because I don't believe for a second that Fishy came up with any of this himself, he's been told that prattling on about anti-car measures is a winner with the kind of people who voted for the Tories last time. I mean, I assume that's the reasoning. White van man types, the people who voted for Brexit, the permanently angry at everything types. I mean, just pause for a second and think. What kind of person would object to an extra 5 minutes on their car journey to save the life of a child? Because most car journeys are less than 5 miles. It's about 3/4 of all car journeys are 5 miles or less. So 5 miles at 30 miles an hour would take you 10 minutes to get there. 5 miles at 20 miles an hour takes 15 minutes. Who among those furious anger merchants bellowing about this are so busy, so in demand, that they cannot afford to lose 5 minutes from their hectic schedule? None of them. Who among them don't prefer walking along a street that's got cafes and wide footpaths or traffic-free zones where they can wander calmly around enjoying the vibe, as opposed to being squeezed onto a narrow pavement while cars and lorries charge past at a speed that would kill anyone if they hit them? I mean, what exactly are they so animated about? People, don't you realise you're being used? You're being manipulated by those with evil intent to make you angry about something that's likely to make your life better. And think who would benefit if we all drive faster, if we give our spaces over to the car? The fossil fuel industry. And which industry did the Tories get £3.5 million in donations from last year? Can you guess? And you got the Tigger of truth twisters, the actual Prime Minister, Fishy Sunak, saying that he's slamming the brakes on harebrained schemes like the 20 mile an hour speed limit, as well as low traffic neighbourhoods. Low traffic neighbourhoods. Driving at speeds that will kill fewer children. Harebrained. He actually said that. I mean, he really is beyond redemption. What a truly appalling man he is. I mean, at least with Bodger, you knew what you were getting. A needy blob of greed that would do anything to maximise his pleasure in any given moment. We understood where we were with him.
Yeah. Wait a minute.
But this guy, this weird little man who none of us voted for, who's been imposed upon us because he wasn't as unhinged as Liz Truss.
Absolutely.
But seems twice as nasty, somehow. You know, there's 29,795 people killed or seriously injured on the roads in this country last year. 29,795. I mean, you'd think that making the streets safer with less traffic and dropping your speed to a rate at which you are 10 times more likely to survive being hit by a car, and a speed that you can stop in half the distance it takes to stop at 30, would be an easy sell to people who actually cared about this country. But the fact is, the fact that the Prime Minister doesn't appear to care about the people of this country is hardly worth mentioning. I mean, that seems obvious. What's depressing is that he thinks there's just enough people who don't care about any of that, who just care about themselves and to hell with everybody else. Just enough people who will be persuaded by all of this to vote him in at the next election. And what's worse is, I wouldn't be surprised if he's right. 0345 6060 973. Let's have Coventry. Frida.
Hello, young man.
Frida.
I'd like to make 2 points, please. One is a slight error in your calculations. When you said about the schools being charities and them spending a fortune to, you know, people that go there to not pay any income tax.
No, there's two different issues.
Sorry, I've got them muddled up. But anyway, the rich guys who spend a fortune on accountants to save paying tax in this country. In addition to that, it's worth noting that their accountants' fees will also be set against tax, i.e. us.
Yeah.
You know, and that was one thing. And then the other thing that no one really sort of mentions very often is that if they manage to get out of the ECHR, the European thing, you know, that includes protection for British people's wages and working conditions. So where would that leave us? Dependent on Sunak? I call him Sneaky Sunak because I'm sure he is.
Yeah, I don't think it's the ECHR has anything to do with people's wages and working conditions, other than...
Not in itself, but it would uphold the rights, you know, which, if you let go of that...
Right. Then we're reliant on the kindness of Rishi Sunak and Suella Braverman. And if you're comfortable with that, then I have a house on the edge of a cliff I'd like to sell you. Frida, thanks for that. 0345 6060 973. Mark texts, would love to know how you define rich. We have 2 children at a relatively low-cost schools. We sacrifice everything such as cars and holidays. We have to move our kids out when they add VAT at the taxpayer's expense. What? We'll have to move our kids out when they add VAT at the taxpayer's expense. I've got no idea what you're talking about. How do I define rich? I don't know, the top 1%. We have 2 children at a relatively low-cost schools, he says. We sacrifice everything such as cars and holidays. Well, good for you. Which decent parent doesn't sacrifice things for their kids? We'll have to move our kids out when they add VAT, but it's not a when, it's an if. And it will be at the taxpayer's expense. Well, the benefit, Mark, will be that if they cut VAT and make it more expensive, then there's a lot of middle-class parents who will insist on their local schools improving. Because at the moment, there's no way in which the MPs are impelled to improve schools, because they aren't. Neither they nor anyone they know sends their children to them.
This is LBC with Nick Abbott.
You're joking.
0345 6060 973. Brighton. Hello, Max.
Hi there.
Hello there.
I agree with all your points, to be quite honest, but my feeling is this, that democracy is still just about alive in this country. And hopefully so. And I think at the next election, we will vote Labour and forget about all this ridiculous shenanigans with the Conservative Party, which has become a farce, and it's become a kind of like a tragic farce. It's not even funny anymore, and move on.
Yeah, it hasn't been funny since you-know-who left the stage.
I think exactly. It hasn't been funny when he joined the stage, to be quite frank. But I think the whole point is that if we do believe in that, then I think the British people are better than what we've been given. And if we have a democracy, we will win, and in the long term, it will be okay. And if it isn't, you know what? I think the British people will get what they deserve, and I will move country.
Well, ask yourself this. I mean, I hate to bring up the B word this late in the show, but do you believe that the Brexit referendum was an act of democracy, pure and simple? Did
I
people?
think that was the biggest. I mean, I can't express how much I feel about that in one word, but what I would say is that it was such a shock to feel that a whole country could be manipulated in the way it was.
Correct, yes. So now take that thought and put that idea on the next election.
That's what I'm saying, but I think what I'm saying is I'm trying to, I don't know if you agree, Nick, but I have faith in people still, and I think that they will, they're not completely leader-led, and they will actually kind of realise what's happened somewhere along the line.
I'm not sure that's true, because I think
really?
the ways of persuasion have been improved. We don't think it's been improved, but the people with evil intent, it has improved dramatically since the referendum. I mean, just think of fake, deep fake videos. You can you can make an actor appear to do all sorts of things without that actor actually having to do it. And so that will be used to great effect. I am absolutely certain, particularly in the American election coming up, but ours too.
Exactly. If that's the case, it's scary. I agree with you there,
absolutely,
Nick.
yeah.
But what I am saying is that I think that the grassroots, in other words, the people who are basically making this country work in terms of tradesmen, in terms of this, in terms of the other and everything else, they're much, much, much more intelligent than the government gives them credit for.
Well, yes, but I think that is hoping that people aren't swayed by propaganda and advertising. And we know that they are, because advertising works. And if you, just as was the case with the Brexit referendum, if you have the ability to find out every single little thing about a person, which companies do now. I mean, it's not just social media companies, because they will sell your information onto other companies which are even more evil than they are, and those companies are in business to sway elections. And they're not shy about saying so. That's what they do. And so they will micro-target every single person in this country, and they have the ability to do that now. They can have a profile of you that they know more about you than you realise about yourself, because they'll have access to every search you've ever done, every website you've ever looked at, every message you put on social media, every like or retweet or anything like that you have ever done. And they will have a perfect profile of you that's so accurate that they know more about you than your mother. And they will be able to target you precisely with an advert that they know, almost beyond doubt, will sway your opinion one way or the other. I think that we're entering a period that is really, actually, it's alarming. You think too much about it and it'll freak you out, Max.
Well, can I say my point? Which is that I hope, and it's only a hope, what you think, I agree with what you're saying, but I hope that we are quite smart as a kind of species, and we actually realise that too. So I think people learn that that's happening and react accordingly. In other words, I think, for instance, we've dealt with the internet and all the kind of absurdity of kind of confusion about suddenly going online and having all your life online quite well. We I mean, in so many cases, we adapt, and I think we're catching up. I agree with all the kind of things that could be devastating in terms of manipulation for society, but I believe in society, and I believe in people that they will realise too, and be quite savvy about things. Maybe a bit late, as what happened with Brexit.
I think you're being optimistic there, Max, because I mean, think about the speed of the advancement in technology. It has gone way faster than our ability, than our own development as individuals. Yeah. I mean, we're still on the paper writing phase. The revolution in communications technology has come so fast that none of us are actually sort of mentally or physically equipped to deal with it. And the evidence for that is that everybody under the age of 30 isn't looking up anymore. They've all got hunchbacks because they spend their entire life staring at their phones. They aren't mentally equipped for it.
Also, what's more worrying is I know people who are just finishing IT degrees or IT mastering, PhDs, and it's way ahead of what we're at the moment.
Yeah.
So
the speed of change is
very, very scary.
It's overwhelming our ability to deal with it.
Algorithms will, as you say, pinpoint things to an extent that we've never had before.
And we are not mentally equipped to deal with that. We have not evolved fast enough.
I know I'm being optimistic, and you say I'm optimistic, but I just hope that people do catch up, and eventually the populace reacts. And if we're living in a democracy, hopefully, that's my point. Right. Hopefully,
you keep saying if we're living in a democracy, Max. I think that speaks volumes, because until recently nobody would have questioned that, but now people are saying if. Max, I got to go, but thanks for that. I don't know. I am concerned about. I was going to say the future, but it's not the future really. It's the now, the present. This coming election is going to be the dirtiest that we have ever seen in this country. It's going to be beyond anything that any of us have ever experienced before, because we've got a party that is so desperate, so weirdly desperate to cling on to power, that they've shown themselves to be capable of absolutely anything. No stone will go unturned. You are about to get a tsunami of information, all of it wrong, that is going to be just pouring through every outlet and input that you've got connected to the internet. You're probably better off out of it, actually. Those people who say that they don't have the internet, well, you're the only ones who won't get affected. Oath, assuming that you don't either listen to the radio or read television or newspapers. But apart from that, everything's fine. 0345 6060 973. Text 84850. Email nicka@lbc.co.uk. If you're on Twitter, it's @LBC. Friday, Saturday, Sunday night at 10. Nick Abbot, LBC.
On your radio, on Global Player, and
Play LBC.
Leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC. This is LBC from Global. Leading Britain's conversation with Nick Abbot.
Okie dokie.
Now, wait a minute. I don't like that kind of talk. Now, just stop it. It upsets me.
Teresa says, Nick, ask yourself one single thing that did not deteriorate in the last 13 years. Yeah, I believe I've said, I've asked that question, more or less. Is your life better now or 13 years ago? Ask yourself that. That's what won Ronnie Reagan his first election, I believe. Asking people that. Is your life better now than it was 13 years ago? But Teresa says, name one single thing that did not deteriorate in the last 13 years. Good question, Teresa. Craig says, I would like an interviewer to ask Fishy Sunak, how are you getting on with your new swimming pool, and is the water in it cleaner than the water in our rivers? Well, if it wasn't, I think he'd get a man in, most certainly. And if a man wasn't available, he'd get a woman. Pauline says, in the 21st century, in the 6th richest country in the world, austerity for state schools and 95% of children, but private schools for 4%. Surely such things stunt growth. Yes, Pauline, what they do is they maintain wealth in the families that already have it, otherwise known as the plan. It's not an accident, it's the plan. Let's have a call in Crayford. Terry. Oh, Terry. Is there anybody out there? Too late. Let's have Camden. Claire.
Hi, Nick.
Claire.
We have established already that the true name for Brexit is, in fact, treason.
Well, there's a lot of people who made money betting against our economy while they were persuading us to vote for the thing that crashed the pound. Now, if that's not treason, I don't know what is.
Yeah. So, on this, in the light of this true name of the thing, those who shout, we must protect our Brexit, and I'm proud of being a Brexiter. How does it sound if we use the true appellation of the thing? How does it sound to say we must protect our treason?
Treason, yeah. We must protect the wealth of those who persuaded us to do something that they were betting would be bad for us. I mean, that's actually what happened. Yeah.
Yeah, because it was sold on the false premises that it's something to be achieved.
Yes.
To strive for.
That we would benefit immediately.
We could have cheaper food, clothing and footwear straight away by getting rid of the protectionist anti-trade tariffs that the EU imposes, and it would be very good for the British people, and it would provide certainty. And I think once there's certainty, the country will begin to reunite.
You know, it's not the people in small boats that we should be concerned about, it's the people who are coming out of Eton that we should be concerned about. Yeah, those are the ones that are the problem.
Yeah, because it's the exact opposite of
everything that
achieving
he said.
something. Yeah. It's about giving away, depriving yourself of things already achieved.
Yes, on the promise that things will get better. And then when they secured your vote, things didn't get better, and they said, "Oh, well, it's because people are too woke, or it's because of the Labour Party, or it's because people didn't believe in it enough." Oh my God! And people bought that.
Yeah. How do you believe? How do you believe in a black hole? How do you believe in antimatter?
Oh wow! Now this is getting really deep.
It is.
We're talking the philosophy of physics now. We're talking about outer space, baby.
Well, if I hope people do wake up, because otherwise.
Yeah, we're doomed.
The country will go out of space.
I don't know what that means, but it's very, very concerning. But appreciate that, Claire. Hey, people, wake up. It's later than you think. Cheers, Claire. 0345 6060 973. Tom says, I live in Wales, and the 20-mile-an-hour changes did cause some confusion at first regarding which roads were 20 and which weren't. But now, no one's really bothered. The Conservative agenda to create a fight from nothing is just pitiful. It will be deeply disturbing if this is what gains the Tories points back. Yeah, they are determined to make you, to sort of feed off your anger. They're determined to make as many people as possible angry about, it doesn't really matter what about. I mean, they're going for absolutely everything now. They're flailing around like a threshing machine. And they're sort of getting through all of the usual suspects. I mean, the woke is a relatively new addition to their canon. But Braverman's going after the immigrants, of course, anybody that doesn't walk, talk and squawk exactly like you, people that are coming over here and doing the jobs that we don't want to do, for instance. But that's not really moving the dial for them. See, this is what is alarming, is that all of these tricks that they usually play, pointing to a small identifiable minority and saying it's their fault. You know, the far right-wing governments all over the world have all tried this, and it usually with success. It's just that countries that are more decent have less success because the politicians aren't normally shameless enough to try this on. But in the countries that politicians seem to have lost the capacity for shame, I'm not pointing at anybody in particular.
Yeah. Wait a minute.
But it seemed to have started with him. When they've lost the capacity for shame, then they'll try anything they can in order to move the dial. And so, they're trying the usual thing of pointing to an identifiable minority and saying it's their fault. But it's not really working for them. The polls aren't increasing in their favour. They're still going down. Fishy Sunak is about as popular as herpes in this country. And so they're becoming ever more frantic as the clock ticks down to their inevitable failure. And so they're just going to start ramping it up because that's the only thing they've got. If at first you don't succeed, keep doing the same thing, but louder. And so they're going to start going through the big list. And they've started already. If immigrants doesn't float your boat, well, how about the gays? Well, just start on them, shall we? And Braverman has done just that. Even Tory MPs have taken a sharp intake of breath about that one. And if it's not the gays, then it'll be single mothers. And if it's not single mothers, then it'll be people on benefits. And if it's not people on benefits, then it'll be the homeless. And if it's not the homeless, then it'll be, oh, God, I don't know, you, probably. Whoever you are, you're next. Because if the polls don't turn around for them, then they're not going to get nicer, are they? 0345 6060 973. Let's try. Oh, Terry is back. Crayford. Hello, Terry.
Hello, Nick. Have you got me this time?
It sounds like you.
Oh, good. And I'm glad to hear you sound better.
Thanks.
The only thing is, I have a problem.
Uh-oh.
I've got repetitive strain injury to my brain from all this garbage that's coming out of the Tories.
Right.
And I can't get any help from the NHS because it wasn't safe in their hands.
Yeah.
And the country's going down the pan, let's face it.
It seems that way to me.
And by the way, I am over 65 and I have never in my life voted Tory, nor ever will.
We found one. Well, thanks very much, Terry. I wish you all the best. Cheers, my dear. Ta-da. 0345 6060 973. Zach texts, how can Rishi Sunak be on the side of the motorist if he struggles to pay for fuel using a bank card? Yes. Yeah. He doesn't drive anywhere. He goes everywhere by chauffeur-driven helicopter. What does he know about the concerns of the car driver? Couldn't care less. It's just that one of his people have told him, I mean, they must have gone through the statistics. They must have a giant computer that's working this stuff out. Oh, my God, Prime Minister, have you seen the polls? It's absolutely catastrophic. Who can we blame for that next? Well, we tried Jeremy Corbyn, and that didn't work. We tried immigrants, and that didn't work either. So, I don't know, people who are stopping others from driving through town at huge speeds. Because, there must be a community of people who don't mind killing children. Let's ally ourselves with them. That's where we are. Something like... I have the statistics here. I could look through them, but I'll probably lose my place. But it's something like you are 7 times more likely to be killed if you're hit at 30 than if you're hit at 20. Something like that. It takes you twice as long to stop if you're driving at 30 as if you're driving at 20. But, never mind about that because, people are very angry that they can't drive through town at a speed that would kill you if you got hit. Who cares about the almost 30,000 people who are seriously injured or killed on our roads because, it might take you 5 minutes longer to get to your destination if you have to go at 20. People are very angry about that. We'll ally ourselves with those people, Prime Minister. That'll work. And he said, yes, let's do that. What a great idea. What an absolutely twisted bunch we've got running this country. It's quite astounding, really, when you think about what they're doing. All just so they can cling on to power. All so that he can continue a job, doing a job that he appears to be uniquely unsuited to. Weird. Very, very strange. Curious, ain't it?
Leading Britain's conversation. Nick Abbot. Alexa, send a comment to LBC.
And I can't stand him.
Rob says, this election is going to get nasty. If you've been in power for over a decade and the country is ruined, you need some scapegoats to blame, and it's going to be the vulnerable. Yeah. Correct, Amundo. What's weird is that for a party that seems solely focused on benefiting the rich, it is the vulnerable that are more likely to be persuaded to vote for them. It's as though everything has been turned upside down. Look at the demographics of the people that say they're going to vote Tory. And it's not the richest among us. If you divide us into ABC 1, C2, DE, where ABC 1 are white-collar, managerial types, the people who are on average wage or above, they are more likely to vote Labour. It's the people lower down the scale, the people who are either just about getting by or who are flat out poor, blue-collar people, or those who are unemployed, they're more likely to vote Conservative. How weird is that? And it is those very people who are in the crosshairs of the Tory party that they think that they can persuade enough of the vulnerable to vote against the interests of the vulnerable. Wow. I mean, the maths that they must have gone through to come up with that equation. Incredible. 0345 6060 973. East Yorkshire. Hello, Mike.
Hi, Nick. Morning. I want to talk, update you on something you said earlier on, but just a thought on Sunak and road safety. He's not interested in road safety. I mean, he took his seatbelt off to make a promotional video, which was unsafe, illegal, and demonstrated his privilege that he thought one rule for you and one rule for me.
Yeah, it's one of the few times he's ever been photographed in a car because he normally takes a helicopter. Doesn't go by road, goes by air.
But just to update you on something you said earlier on, you remember the Tunbridge Wells incident where he said he took money from deprived areas to give it to like Tunbridge Wells? Well, you said earlier on that he's going to give X millions to cities. Well, you haven't read tomorrow's Express.
No.
Because in tomorrow's Express, he says, this government has been giving money to cities. That's going to stop now. I'm going to give 1.1 billion pounds to rejuvenate themselves, many of which are in the Red Wall constituency.
Yes. Well, cities, of course, vote Labour.
Exactly. So that he's chasing votes with our money.
Yeah.
1.1 billion to try and win him some votes.
Yep.
But years ago, the other thing he says in this is, we're going to sort the problem of empty shops. Now, when I had my own construction company, I was involved in shop fitting, and there was a similar scheme 34 years ago. What they did was they cancelled the commercial rates, which don't go to local authorities, they go direct to the government. So the government can cancel them, that's easy. And they paid the rent for them. Now, just think who owns commercial properties. Conservative donors, investment funds owned by conservative donors, hedge funds owned by conservative donors, they're going to pour money into the mates' pockets again.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable.
It is believable.
Yeah, you're right. It is believable. I've seen it done before.
Yeah, it's you stand back and look at what's going on, and it just seems incredible that they are they have the nerve to try it on, and B, that they're actually being successful.
It is difficult to believe what's going on, and if the money thing ever came out, I know you don't believe that it ever will, because the inquiries will say lessons must be learnt or something.
Yeah.
But if it ever did come out, people would be absolutely horrified.
Yeah, I mean, the amount of money that has been taken from us just as an example, just for PPE that either didn't arrive or was useless when it did, the amount of billions that has just disappeared from this country. You know what, the pandemic was, for most countries on Earth, the pandemic was a moment of a public health crisis. But what's happened in this country, it just seemed to be a moment where suddenly the doors of the Bank of England got thrown open, and those with a pass could go in and just help themselves.
Yeah, I mean, on a direct note of that, I knew somebody who provided the tents or temporary structures for testing and what have you. And I said, how much are they paying for these? And they said, well, roughly in 3 weeks they're paying the same price that they paid if they'd bought them to rent them from us. The money that was thrown away. It was unbelievable. I mean, how can you rent something at a third of the cost? Testing wasn't going to disappear in 3 weeks, Nick. It was going to be there for months. And they knew it. And yet nobody had the nous to actually say, right, we'll buy the things, even if we throw them away at the end.
Yes.
It will cost the public a fraction. They didn't care.
And I believe that the instruction has gone to the courts that they should not look into any of this because it is not in the public's interest.
What?
Yeah, that's the phrase they used. Not in the public interest to look into any of these matters about where all of our money has gone.
It's in my interest that the government are spending my money to try and win themselves votes.
Yeah.
That really, really annoys me. I mean, like the badge, it's all for publicity.
Yeah.
They're spending my money to make themselves look good to try and attract votes.
Right.
I am really not happy, Nick.
No, well, neither should you be, Mike. Stay angry, but be angry at the right things. Good point. Well spotted. Thanks a lot, mate. 0345 6060 973. Let's have, let me see now. Bromley. Hello, Julie.
Oh, yes, hi. Can you hear me?
Yes, Julie.
Am I coming through okay?
Loud as a bell.
Oh, thank you. The reason I rang is because in reflecting over those 13 years of the Conservative government, especially what you were saying with Mr. Rees-Mogg wanting to unwrap red tape around trading.
Yeah.
All that sort of rhetoric, what he's trying to say is he doesn't want to have any protective rules for the vulnerable. And I class myself as a vulnerable worker. I'm a minimum wage earner, and I have to. I've got a 12-hour contract, but really it's not a 12-hour contract because they want you available 7 days a week, and they want to be able to put you in for as many hours that they want.
Yes.
All over the place, right?
That's what they mean by a high-wage, high-skill economy. They mean the opposite of that.
Exactly. And so as I feel vulnerable, but I will not be voting for them. I don't care what promotional literature they put out or whatever they do. I will not, because I can see I've got a choice. I can walk away from this job, but I've got colleagues who can't. And I had a colleague who started at 10:30 working, and he didn't get a break for 5 hours. When I queried it, because I could see he was flagging, I got told the company says he's not entitled to any break until he's done 6 hours.
Yeah, I have to break it to you, everybody, that is where we are headed. They want us to be slaves.
People need to wake up. It's frightening, and not only is it frightening, it's wrong. And that's what the Labour Party came about, to protect, to give some rights protection to workers. And I know that the unions got. I don't know. I mean, that they say the unions got too strong in the 70s and all that. But I feel a fool that I haven't paid £12 a month and got myself some protection by being a union member.
Yes.
Because you don't get unless there are rules set by the government. Companies, large companies, they only are answerable to their owners or their shareholders.
Of course.
And they don't care about the workers.
At all.
And they don't care about protecting you or giving you anything, any decent.
They care about short-termism. They care about the share price in the short term and the bonuses that kick in based on that share price.
Yeah, and I'm going to tell you something. I'm not mentioning any names, but the manager who's not manager anymore, he was under such pressure to have the same productivity, but they cut 100 hours of labour. So this individual had to get everything out into the shop, but he didn't have the wages to pay for 100 hours.
Right.
And so consequently, he did something sneaky. And 13 years ago, you used to get a wage slip, a paper pay slip, didn't you?
Yeah.
Now it's all, you get them online, and I'm not great with IT, and I trusted the company I worked for, and I assumed that when I got my wages, it was true.
Right.
And I never looked at my slip, and because my manager was under such pressure because they cut all those hours, he sneakily the published rota, he doctored it. And so the hours I worked weren't represented in because he swapped them out as holiday and things like that. And it was vaguely, I thought it was a rough sum here, rough sum there. And I never pinpointed it down. It was only when I went to go finally to have a bit of annual leave that ultimately I got told, no, your annual leave's gone. And I said, what do you mean? The system says you can't have it. And I said, what do you mean I can't have it? Because he'd taken my annual leave.
Right, so he was under pressure to decrease the number of hours that workers work. So rather than actually do that, he pretended that those who were working weren't working as much as they could. Grief.
And what the companies do is that they give you a basic contract. So you say your hours are 12 hours. But they don't want you for 12 hours. They want you for much more.
Yeah.
But when they come to do holiday pay, they only have to pay you the basic hours for that week, that annual leave that week. And so you could be doing 28 hours routinely, 30 hours every week. But they don't pay you that as holiday pay.
Right. Yeah, but I've got to leave it there, Julie, because I've just run out of time. But it seems to me that is exactly where we are going in this country. And all this talk about we need less red tape. Red tape is holding us back. What they mean by that is that people's terms and conditions and the benefits of their work is what's holding them back. And by them, I mean the people who have control of the means of production, the people who own corporations. Their profits are being held back by these awful workers who keep asking for money. and holidays and sick pay and all the rest of this stuff. If we could just get rid of all that, then our profitability would be through the roof, and I think that's where we're going. Minimum hours contracts, minimum wages, slaves, essentially. I mean, that would be the logical conclusion to where we're going. And that's what they mean by cutting red tape. They mean cutting everything that you rely on from your work. It seems, unless you can persuade me otherwise, it seems logical to me. I mean, it's. Yeah, I'm going to have to stop talking about it because it just gets too exhausting, really, doesn't it?
This is LBC with Nick Abbott.
You've got a good, your mind is a little bit, you know what I mean, three-dimensional.
No, I have no idea what you mean. Hippie. Richard says, you were going on about road safety and government seemingly against it, but isn't the opposition leadership supposed to be saying this sort of stuff? Yeah, you'd have thought so, yeah. But, not saying that sort of stuff seems to be doing quite well for them so far, so just keep on keeping on. That's what I say. Whatever you're doing, keep doing that. Helen said, you would have to assume that they would be more sort of hands-on, that they would actually decide to jump one way or the other about at least one or two issues if they got into power. But they're concerned now about losing the lead that they've got, because that would be, apart from personally devastating to everyone involved, it would be the greatest loss in political history, I would imagine. Look at the gap that's there now, just by Keir Starmer not really doing anything. Just keep doing that, I say. Helen says, there is no choice to go to a private school if you're poor. The only people with a choice are the wealthy. They should scrap private schools and invest in state schools for everyone. These state schools will always be rubbish if we don't distribute the wealth fairly. The behaviour and class sizes will change when everyone is contributing to their community schools due to more investment, and I've taught in both, says Helen. Helen, I wouldn't go along with scrapping private schools any more than I would go along with scrapping big houses or first-class seats on a plane. If you got the money, that's fine, but it should not be subsidised by us poor dopes who pay taxes who can't afford those things. That's nuts. And Max says, so according to your logic, parents who send their kids to private school can pressure local state schools to improve if they have to remove them from said private schools. Could you explain how that works practically? Well, come on, Max. Can you not just work that out yourself? God, it's blooming obvious, isn't it? Ilford. Hello, Philip.
Oh, hello. Nick, yes. It's all about repetition, isn't it? I think you don't repeat enough the importance of UK tax havens with these people. They sit in these tax havens and their portfolios are invested worldwide. All they're interested from Britain is the tax haven situation.
Well, what we do for a living in this country is wash clean the ill-gotten gains of the international criminal super-rich. That is what we do. It's shameful that about 7 out of the top 10 tax havens on earth have got the Union Jack flying from their government building. It's what we do.
Does Germany have their tax havens for their people?
I believe it's the reason, well, certainly one of the reasons, apart from removing all of our the things that keep us safe, red tape as they call it, that we left the European Union, because the EU is going to make it more difficult for individuals and corporations to avoid tax.
They were coming for our tax havens. So these people in the tax havens investing worldwide aren't interested in UK PLC, but they are interested in the odd contract. So if you look at HSL, Track and trace, PPE, the water companies, all these ones that you do repeat every now and then, which if the total of those contracts is about 250 billion, the total of the money extracted, it doesn't matter if these are successful. It doesn't matter if HSL goes to London, it goes to Old Oak Common instead. It doesn't matter if it goes to Birmingham, it goes to some sort of distant place. It doesn't matter if track and trace works or not, PPE works or not, or the water companies clean up the water properly, because it's the extraction of the wealth and then given out tax-free that counts. Because if they were proper capitalists rather than kleptocrats, then they would be interested. I mean, capitalism works by all those four things, HS2, track and trace, PPE, but benefiting. It's overall better if you do these things and they make more money for the wider country, the other companies and the other people.
No, I get what you're saying. I think kleptocratic is a pretty good description of what we are in this country. We don't really make stuff here, not like places like Germany, or certainly not like China. What we do here is, instead of creating wealth, we just move it from one place to another. Trickle-up economics is what we do in this country. Most of our economy is based on services, which is the banking racket, everything that's associated with that, lawyering and the what do you call them? Those firms like they call them the big four, the services firms, and us spending money we haven't got on stuff we don't need, racking up debt. When they say that the economy has just improved over the course of June because of the good weather, that means that we went out and spent money on beer and barbecue stuff, and we went to Brighton for the day and those kind of things. That's what we do in this country, which is not creating wealth, it's just moving it from the poor to the rich. With the obvious result that, I'll give you those numbers again, just a few of them. 45% of all children in poverty in this country are in families where the youngest child is under 5. 71% of poor children live in working families. 4.2 million children in this country are living in poverty. None of this is coincidental. And thanks for that, Philip. Leave it with me. I've got to take a break in a minute. Somebody said on this show just a moment ago, in the 1970s, unions got too powerful. I don't think that's true. I think that the fight against unions and against people grouping together for their own benefit started in the 1970s. And if you look at the chart of how people's earnings have improved since the 1970s, no one under the top 10% has got a pay rise in real terms since the 1970s. They're flatlined, pretty much. And that is because I would posit that this sort of war against people's ability to earn, this the moving of the wealth from the those just about getting by to the super rich, it started then. There's a flat line. If you look at the bottom 90% of us, none of us have had a pay rise since the 1970s. But if you look at the top 10%, and particularly the top 1%, their pay has taken off like a rocket ship. It goes practically vertical just lately. So that's where the money has gone. That's why you can't afford anything anymore, is because we don't make anything here. We just move money around for a living. And unless you already have a lot of it, none of it's coming your way.
This is LBC with Nick Abbott. Call 0345 6060 973. Text 84850. Alexa, send a comment to LBC.
Come on, we're running late.
Let's have Islington. Hello, Adam. An ecstasy of fumbling. He's snoring. Well, he has been waiting a good long while, and I know it's pretty late. I think this is the same chap that fell asleep when he was on hold last time. Hey, Adam. Wake up. Time to go to bed. I'll try this one. That usually works. How about this? Absolutely nothing. Oh, it sounds like you need one of those anti-snore strips. Oh, it's painful. I can't listen to another single solitary second. Hey, Adam. Time's up. 0345 6060 973. Heston. Hello, Isaac.
Hello, Nick.
Isaac.
Hello. Yeah, I'm still awake, by the way. So
glad to hear it.
Anyway.
Me too. Just the two of us then.
Right. Yeah, I'm going to bed at 1 o'clock. So you know.
Right. I'll be asleep.
Anyway.
I'll be asleep at the wheel myself. Go ahead.
Okay. Right. 3 quick points. Right. Number one, I'm approaching 65 years of age.
65 years old. Yes.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. Yep. Another year and was it 4 months? So, and I've never voted Conservative, and I never will. Right?
Wow.
Okay.
We found another
Number
one.
Two.
That's two.
Number two, right? I've been thinking about trying to go to university to study political science, right?
Ugh.
But what I've found better is just listening to this current government and their propaganda on YouTube and national television.
Yes.
Is all the political science I need.
Yes,
right?
exactly. Whatever you hear from them, just do and think the opposite, and you won't go far wrong.
Okay, and finally, number three, right, the magic money tree, right? 56 cities, £20 million is £1 billion, right? What about putting that and more into the National Health Service? There you go.
What a concept. Actually funding the National Health Service.
With £1 billion.
Would you like to be Prime Minister, Isaac? Can you start first thing Monday morning?
Can you imagine it?
Well, it couldn't possibly be worse than what we got at the moment. I mean, really. Thanks a lot, Isaac. 0345 6060 973. Stu text, my life is better now than 13 years ago. I've never been overdrawn since Labour were in control. I eat better, I sleep better, I have a nicer house and a better car. I have loads more disposable income. Life is good. Did I mention that I also separated from my wife 13 years ago? Separated from his wife 13 years ago. Right. A listener with material.
Oh, no.
James says it is Jimmy Carter's 99th birthday today. Please, could you wish him a happy birthday? I'm sure he will be listening. Jimmy Carter? Jimmy Carter. Is he still alive? I think, yeah. Jimmy Carter seemed to be a decent human being to me. I mean, I don't know whether he still does it. I mean, 99 is pretty good going if he does. But he used to go out and help people build homes with his actual hands. A member of my family delivered him as a baby, comes the message from next door. Is that right?
Yeah, 100%. In Clayton's, Georgia, the first president to be born in a hospital.
Georgia, the first president to be born in a hospital. Where were the others born?
Home birth, normally.
Right.
Private physicians, etc.
Oh, yeah, private, of course. All richy rich. Huh, is that a fact? Well, there's stuff you hear on this show. Educational, no?
No.
Jimmy Carter. 99. He made it. Oldbury. Hey, Ranjit.
Hi, Nick. I'm not going to sleep yet. Right. I'm having a beer. I'm on my third beer now, yeah?
A beverage.
Booze.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, do you know next year there's going to be 3 general elections in the world which are quite important, right?
Go on.
One in America.
Yes.
One obviously here. And one in India.
Right.
Yeah. Which ones do you think are going to get overshadowed by and left in the background? Is it going to be India?
Yes.
this one or the American one's going to be the most popular one, isn't it?
Oh my God, it'll be prime time show business from start to finish.
Yeah, so if Rishi Sunak, right, calls an election at the same time as the US, right, we'll be concentrating more on what's going on in the US than what's going on in here.
Well, quite possibly. I mean, they'll get equal airtime, let's put it like that.
Well, you'll give it equal airtime, but the dinglings, will be more interested in what's going on outside of this country.
Not sure that's true. I don't think so. That might be the beer talking there, Ranjit.
No, and the other thing, in my last life, I used to be a union rep, and I was very, very senior, right? And I was in charge of 650 drivers nationwide. My management team said to me, "Why are you behaving like a union rep for?" I said, "Well, I wear the badge, don't I?" Right? And
he was asking you why you were acting like a union rep when you were a union rep.
Yeah,
right.
That's how thick they were. And this is directors, okay? The one flew over from Brussels and he's having a meeting somewhere. I don't want to divulge too much, But basically, I said, "Mate, I wear the badge." I said, "I wear the badge." He said, "We can send you to prison if you bring this company down." I said, "Look, listen, right, I'll send you a visiting order if you send me to prison."
Yeah.
Right? And I said to him, "Listen, the thing is, the people that work for you provide you with a good living, right? They work honestly and hard for you.
Yes.
So why don't you just return the favour?
Reward them, yes. Why should the people that create the wealth get none of it back?"
None of it back. So we argued, right? I mean, I wasn't the top man. I was the third one down, right? There was two people above me. They were kind of, "Come on, Ranjit, look, the company needs us." I said, "No, they don't." I said, "I'm in between jobs." I said, "I had a roof over my head before I come here. I've got a roof over my head now. And when I leave, I still have a roof over my head. I don't want my workers to say, 'Oh, Ranjit betrayed us.'" And I've been left now 17 years, and people still ring me up and ask me for advice.
Right.
People like Sunak should think now.
Not on this show.
No, not on this show. No, what I'm saying is, if you want to leave a legacy, like someone like Sunak, do something good for the everyday people.
Right, well, I think that ship's sailed there, Ranjit. Doing something good for everyday people. Not really one of his top priorities.
It's the country's number one priority. It's my number one priority, up and down the country, and that will be our focus.
He's gripping it. Ranjit, gotta go, but thanks for your service. Appreciate it. The man with the badge. 0345 6060 973. Stockton on Tees. Hello, AJ.
Oh, hello, Nick. Thanks. Do you know Jimmy Carter said he'd seen a UFO, which I thought he called them.
I couldn't understand a word that you just said. What was that? Something about Jimmy Carter and a UFO.
Yeah, he said he'd seen a UFO, which I thought was pretty cool, admitting to it.
Right.
I thought he was a decent enough guy.
Yeah.
At Burton Present School.
Yeah, he seemed like a decent bloke. Exactly. Can you imagine that?
Yeah. This is just a wee bit about this American thing that you say is being fostered on with. You know what TV presenter Louis Theroux?
Yeah, I think I know which one that is, yeah.
A very quiet, diffident, soft-spoken style he has.
Right.
Anyway, I saw him taking 3 Goldman Sachs executives to task on how they get rules, regulations and laws altered merely to benefit their own financial positions.
Right.
So they were just laughing in Louis' face. And through the laughter, one of them shrugged and stated his letters to it. But they really don't care, but they are very, very aware. That's a bit sociopathic, really, I think.
Okay, I kind of got some of that, but not entirely all of it. But for those that did, we thank you very much, AJ. But I got to go because I'm running out of time. But cheers, mate. I have ringing in my ears. Maybe that's part of the problem. I've had ringing in my ears for ever since I've got the lurgy. And I've had ringing in my ears ever since. And I just looked it up on the World Wide Web, and apparently it's a thing. If you have the disease, then you are quite likely to get ringing in your ears. I mean, it's not like this. It's kind of annoying. It makes it a little bit difficult to understand what some people are saying, especially when they don't speak clearly. Now, okay, I'll do one more text, I think, from these. I've got just about time to do one more. It's very, very brief and sums up what we've been talking about succinctly, I think. Ben texts, has running children over in your car become a wedge issue for the next election? Yeah, I think it has. That's where we are. Strange, eh? 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 Strange.